to get him yelled at on Twitter. I'm talking, of course, about Chris Cotillo, who joins us right now. Cotillo, how are we doing tonight?
By Twitter, you mean the Poynter Institute for Journalism that it's become the last 2 days, right?
It's true. Everyone's very upset at you and Smitty over there for even daring to broach the topic of Rafael Devers potentially moving positions when they spent $40 million on a guy who plays his position. How dare you do something like that, Chris?
Yeah, well, that has been a topic of discussion on Twitter. I think people don't really get that when we ask the same question like 15 times, it's because I think we were all in shock to the answers we were getting, and we were trying to give him maybe a little bit of an off-ramp on some of them of, are you sure? Do you mean this? And he did, to the full extent of how he possibly could. And, adamant, I think, is understating it a little bit.
Yeah, Adam, I'd agree with that. And I know that there's been a lot of talk and discussion about the language barrier and things getting lost in translation through his translator. I don't speak Spanish, so I can't really speak to that at all. You were there. You heard him. We all heard him, obviously, and saw the body language. Do you want to elaborate on that at all? Do you think anything could have been lost in translation there?
No. I think it's a thankless, extremely tough job that Davison, the translator who was there yesterday, and the other translators do. He has to basically take what Devers is saying in real time and give it back to us. And, it's on camera. There's not a chance to write it down and go through it. There's also, just the rapid fire, questioning that was happening. But Rafi also did answer a couple of questions in English, and I think that kind of told a lot of the story. Not to doubt any of the translations, obviously, but I said, can you expand on that? And he looked me in the eyes and said, I play third. I don't understand how any of that could possibly be, lost in this whole process. So I think that he was felt like he was sold a bill of goods by the Red Sox and Chaim Bloom a couple of years ago. We heard correctly that Chaim Bloom's not here anymore. Devers is pissed. I mean, it's not a media creation. Anybody who, watched the body language and watched how he was, he's not happy about this situation. And talking to people around him, that's very clear. So I think big picture, two thoughts on it. Number one, if I'm the Red Sox, that's how I want my star player to react. He didn't roll over and say, all right, Bregman, it's your position now. He's saying, it's my position. I want to fight for it. I want to compete for it. And I want to be the guy because that's what I want to do. And part two, at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. As people have correctly pointed out, Devers is an employee of the Boston Red Sox. He's not going to demand a trade. He's not going to ask for his release, and he's not going to retire. So therefore, he's going to be wherever Alex Cora puts him in the lineup on opening day, happy or not. That's just the reality of this. I did ask him that question, which I felt like my tone was a little bit snarky, but it wasn't meant to be because I was just kind of in awe. Isn't it their decision? And he said kind of like, no, it's my decision, and I want to be the third baseman. But at the end of the day, obviously, it's what Cora wants to do. And I think the other thing here is this is all about Christian Campbell. I think this is all about the fact that they really, really, really want to give this kid a chance to be on the opening day roster, and they want him to compete and earn it. And so that's why they're leaving it open right now. That's, I think, what their preferred path would be. And I think you understand it. Promises are not in the past, and that's a whole different issue. You can understand Campbell at second, Bregman at third, Devers at DH as probably your best alignment both offensively and defensively. So I see where the Red Sox are coming from. I do think there's questions about how they communicated it along the way.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. You mentioned Alex Cora. We saw when Bregman signed and they had the press conference that there's a lot of love in the room there between Cora and Bregman. Cora talked about how much he wanted the team to sign Bregman. Devers is obviously a little put off by the whole Bregman experience so far. Has that, or do you think that could negatively affect his relationship with Cora, Rafael Devers?
No, I don't think so. I mean, at the end of the day, this is something that is just going to blow over. Whether that's next week, whether that's next month, if you're the Red Sox, as long as it's done by opening day, then no harm, no foul. Again, I think it's the reaction that you kind of want from the competitor endeavors. No, this is my position. This is where I want to stay. But he doesn't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to, making this argument. What's he going to sue them? It's one of those things that the feelings might be hurt right now, but this is a relationship that has 9 more years. And I think Cora, he's told this story like 19 times already, but he went through this experience where he was the starting shortstop in L.A. They acquired Cesar Turris. Cora was pissed for a couple days, and then he was moved on and played second and, played his role on those Dodgers teams. Cora was also, replaced by a young Dustin Pedroia here in Boston, right? So He's a guy that's a player that's understood it, and these things happen. We've heard a lot about John Valentin and stuff that happened, that I was too young to remember in the late 90s, but
you're too young for John Valentin. Oh, you just made me feel like a real old fart.
I think that was 97. I was 18 months old, so my bad. But
anyway, go on. Sorry.
Things, I mean, they happen. They happen along the way.
Yeah, no, they certainly do. And Alex Cora certainly was never a level of player that Rafael Devers was. But I think that when you sort of hear him talk it out, I agree that there is something to be said for the competitiveness of it, and you want your guys to want to compete, but don't you also want them to say things like, whatever's best for the team, whatever can help the team the most is what I want to do? Like, they just got off the plane. Like, it's a little early for these kind of gripes, isn't it?
If Rafi has an 850 OPS, it's not going to matter. And I think that's what they look at too. 800, 850, 900, whatever it might be. And I do think they think that his offensive potential is even higher if he takes the wear and tear of playing third base. You saw what happened with the shoulder last year, that it could help him as he gets older. I know he's just 28, but, the 30s are going to come quickly. It's not, I think, the vibes in the clubhouse thing, obviously it's great. And we've seen the great Red Sox teams from 04 to, 13 to whatever have that type of reputation. It's not an NBA team where one guy's not going to pass the other the ball because they don't love each other. They're going to take your individual at-bats. They're going to be in their positions. They're going to do whatever it takes to win. And so at the end of the day, and look, Jeter and A-Rod were on the same side of the infield without speaking to each other for so long.
Right.
Not saying this is getting there or anywhere close, but they're all professionals. They're all very highly paid to be in that room and be fine. Bregman said all the right things today, all the cliches. And, fans want these athletes to open up, and they want these athletes to be honest. And we obviously saw that from Casas today, and we saw it from Devers for the second straight year on the media bench. A year ago, he said he wanted, improvements. Now they got him. I don't think he expected it would be at his position.
Yeah, and and on some level, I can kind of empathize with him there. Like, they haven't made they made the playoffs once, I guess, since his first full season when they won the World Series. And he's putting up numbers, and he's being a good soldier. And now they found, whoa. Did Batman just go by? They finally spent some money.
It's Florida. The motorcycles are out and about.
Oh, I'm sure, even in Fort Myers. So they finally go and spend money. And from Devers' perspective, you finally go out there and do it and try and help us, and you bring in someone who plays my position. He was there when they brought in Trevor Story and then got rid of Xander Bogaerts. It's not going to be that, but I can see him not being thrilled that that's the first place they went.
Yeah, for sure. And, I always said this was an imperfect fit because of all of the reasons that we're seeing now, but also, if it was Arenado and you had to trade Casas, to me, that didn't make a ton of sense. Comments and candor aside from him as a good young player. So to me, an infielder never made the most sense considering you have Campbell and Meyer coming and the guys you do have. Sean McAdam and I on our podcast, Fenway Rundown, by the way, have always been talking about for months, Teoscar Hernandez and even Tyler O'Neill just being cleaner fits from an offensive perspective. They weren't in on those guys, and they were in on the Bregmans and Arenados of the world. So clearly, I think the infield defense thing was a huge part of it. And, there's no way around it. Bregman at third, Story at short, whoever, Campbell at second, that's going to be a better mix there than you've seen the last couple of years. And I think they're sick of, everything they've tried from the labs to the drills and the different combinations up the middle not working. And so this is a drastic change because that infield defense part, if you watch the team day to day, is a huge, huge thing that's been lacking the last few years. They gave up a lot of errors. They gave up a lot of under and runs, and I think they're making this move with that in mind.
Yeah, it was certainly a big, big problem last year, no question about it. How about Garrett Crochet? I know it's very early, and I think he gave up a home run in batting practice today or live BP or something like that, but how's he fitting in with the crew down there, and what sort of expectations do you think the team has for him?
I went up to his locker after the workout and said this exact same thing to him that I'll tell you. Uh-huh. He got the absolute best welcome to Boston moment you could possibly get in an empty stadium in Florida. He gives up a monster homer to Trevor Story. Good swing, coming in 98, going out even faster. And there's a tour going on with JetBlue. There's like team staff, 10 reporters, and then this tour of like 8. Story goes yard, doesn't even run the bases, just walks back to the dugout. And this guy in the stands goes, "Welcome back, Trevor," just as loud as humanly possible. And I said to Crochet, "That's your first taste of the Boston experience." And he said, as he was seething on the mound, he thought the same thing. He seems like a guy that's just going to fit in really well. Today you see him and Chapman and Hendricks and some of these guys on the mound, even in an empty ballpark like that in live BP sessions. And it's a very physical pitching staff. It looks like a basketball team when you look at how massive Chapman is and him and even Whitlock and those guys are pretty big too. And so I think he's fitting in well. Obviously, the extension questions will come, but he's been everything they've wanted and more from a behind-the-scenes perspective so far.
Very good. And he was in Chicago with the White Sox, so he's used to empty stadiums, so that probably won't throw him off too much. Chris Cotillo.
It was the biggest crowd he's pitched in front of in over a year.
I would imagine. Yeah, I was going to say. Chris Cotillo, Mass Live, thanks for the time tonight. Certainly appreciate it. We'll talk to you again before you come back up, I'm sure. And you can check out all his stuff over at Mass Live and on Twitter at Chris Cotillo. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Of course. Anytime. Thanks.
All right. See you later. That is Chris Cotillo, once again, joining us here on the Christian Arcand Show.